Good evening, everybody. You got to be ready for that. You knew that was coming. It is so good to see you. Okay, some of you apparently didn't know that was coming. I apologize. Seriously. Listen, Michael came and did a VBS for us pretty recently, and I think he was trying to make fun of me and do that. Didn't match the energy. Sorry to say. But it's real good to be here with you guys. I just love you all, and listen, just being able to come and visit this week is just great, and being able to speak to you tonight. I really enjoy that, appreciate that. Go ahead and turn your Bibles to Exodus 13. We're going to jump in and look at a couple things just as way as background goes. But tonight, our goal and topic is bread from heaven and water from a rock. We're going to focus on chapters 16 and 17 most of the time. This will be more so Bible class. I do like the participation and talking, and so please feel free to interrupt at any point and say good things. But I want to start out by just thinking through the background of how we get to Exodus 16 just a little bit. I really like that last night, there it is. Last night, BJ mentioned something about Exodus 13, verse 17, and I think it's a good place for us to start. So think about this. In Exodus 13, verse 17, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them along the road to the land of the Philistines, even though it was nearby. For God said the people will change their minds and return to Egypt if they face war. God knows his people, and God knows their heart, and he knows what they would do in different situations. And so we know already that wherever God leads them, that's where they're supposed to be. God knows what is best for them and how to lead them and all of that. You look at verse 21, and how was it that God led them? Yeah, pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. So they were there. They were able to see, like visually, the presence of the Lord, which is just totally mind-blowing to me in a lot of ways. Like, just think about just being able to look up and see God is with us. I can see that right there. And that's how he led them. But I want you to look, remember what BJ said last night also about when they got to the Red Sea. They left Egypt and got to the Red Sea. The sea's in front of them. Where are they going to go? Who's right behind them? Chariots, Egyptians. So many people coming, and that's got to be terrifying. And they're there, but in chapter 14, verse 14, I love this. The Lord will fight for you, and you must be quiet. That's awesome. Sometimes I think I need that in my life. Just be quiet. Just stop. Because I get so worked up over things. But we understand it's God who was leading them through that and all that. And so eventually they cross the Red Sea. They're so happy. They're victorious. I want to take a second to look at the end of chapter 15, though. Someone care to read Exodus 15, verses 22 through 27. Out loud, please.
Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea and went to the wilderness of Shur. Went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they did not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter, and it was named therefore Marah. And the people grumbled against Moses and said, "What do we drink?" And he cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a log, and he threw it in the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made for them a statute and a rule, and there he tested them and said, "If you will diligently listen to the voice of your God and do what is right in his eyes and give ear to his commandments and keep all of his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord, your healer." Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the water.
Okay, so they leave the Red Sea, they get out, and they travel 3 days, getting pretty thirsty at that point. They don't have water. They come to some water. It's like, finally, here's water. What's the problem? Bitter. Yeah, it's not good to drink. Like, it's not drinkable. Like, how frustrating would that be? Just imagine. You get there, and it's like, finally I got water, but it's totally useless because I can't drink that. What's God's solution to this?
how do they get water?
Well, if you do right in the sight, he'll take care of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. The provision of God, if you do what he says, he will take care of you. And in this case, what does he say for them to do to be able to drink this water? Throw a log in it. Like, as we all do when we come across bad water, right? Like you just throw a tree in, apparently it's okay. It's a bit good. No, that doesn't make sense, obviously. And this is weird. I wonder if there's a little bit of foreshadowing in this, by the way. They're coming out of the Red Sea. Give God 3 days and a tree, and you could take something bitter and make it sweet. Jesus, the resurrection. But this is just a hint of what is to come. So they get to this water, and what exactly did they say to Moses when they were grumbling? Yes, they're complaining, they're grumbling, but how do they say it in this case?
What you doing leading us here?
Yeah, he doesn't quite get to that point yet. It's more right at this point, he's like, where are we going to get water? Is that a valid question? Is that a good question? Like, should we?
After 3 days of not having it, yeah.
Yeah. The last time that you went 3 days without water, what were you thinking? Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Most people probably don't experience that. Some people, yeah. But that would probably change your perspective a little bit. But right now, they're asking a valid question. Where is this water going to go? Like, how are we going to get water? What are we going to do? Because, survival and all of that. And then God lets them know. He says what he told them, that if you follow my commands, if you do what I say, then I'll provide for you. And it's funny, he doesn't just say that he'll provide for them. What's he not going to do? Yeah, give them the diseases that he gave the Egyptians. Yeah. And so I wonder if they remembered that. Like, how long had it been since they came out of Egypt? Not long at all. So that should be in pretty recent memory. And so it's just like, okay, remember everything that happened to the Egyptians? Yeah, don't do that stuff because same thing's going to happen to you. It was really good. Now, after this, where does verse 27 say that they go? Elam. And what was special about Elam?
Water there.
They had water. And what else?
Palm trees.
Yeah, man, it sounds, there's just like, there's food, there's water. This sounds like a paradise. It's like, man, you went through 3 days of really hard stuff. So now here's your reward. You are in a place that is so perfect. It's like a little oasis. And that's the end. That's the end of the story. Happily ever after. Why don't the Israelites stay at Elam? I guess there's a few answers for that. That wasn't what God promised. Promised land was somewhere else. So think about this. It is so good for them to be at Elam where they're able to enjoy this water, the date palms, whatever is there, and they're enjoying that, but that's not going to last forever. That's temporary because their real journey hasn't really began yet. And they're wanting to get to the promised land because that's where God said that he was going to take them. So let's see what happens as soon as they leave there. Chapter 16, somebody read verses 1 through 3.
And they took their journey from Elam, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elam and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the children of Egypt murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and we did eat bread to the full, for ye have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly of hunger.
Whew. Oh, King James. There it is. No, that was. Oh my goodness! Think about that. Overall, in this story, who is the one that's doing the leading? Who's leading the Israelites? God. Ultimately, Moses is. Moses is like the focal point. And by the way, I think that's why a lot of the wrath of the people is directed towards him, because, I mean, he's the guy in front. But ultimately, God was the one who told them to leave Elim in the first place. With the pillar of cloud, that's how they know where to go. And so God intentionally took them from Elim, and he took them out of Elim. And where do they end up? Yeah, they're getting towards Sinai, and they're in this wilderness. And what's the problem there? No food. They're hungry. And so really Israel's complaining again because of this. And I mean, it's just, think about this. Sometimes in our lives, God can take us from a place where we're comfortable to a place where we are not. And he can do that on purpose for our benefit. Have you ever been through anything like that? What's some examples of how God does that in our lives?
Lose a job.
Yeah, lose a job. It's like, man, I feel safe and secure. I have this, but then I lose it. Now what am I going to do? What else? Sickness, yeah. Ever get sick? Ever know somebody who's gotten sick? Yeah, bless you. Example. Thank you. That was an object lesson. Yeah. So there's so many times when we experience this in our lives and we go through whatever we're going through, but instead of using this as a faith builder, because ultimately these difficulties that we go through, they can help build our faith. What's the passage from James 1? What do those trials do?
Produce perseverance and help us to become what God's shaping us into.
Yeah, there we go. They actually help push us toward the end goal, what really God has in mind for us. And I'm sure we've all felt frustrated because God's taken us away from something, or maybe we were comfortable before and now we're not. But there's something that God can do through that. Now, the accusation against Moses is that you've led us out here to die. One, dramatic much? But two, just think about being God. If you were God and you have this people that you had clearly demonstrated yourself to and you had saved out of the land, and now they're complaining. So they didn't have water. You fix that problem. They get a little further. They don't have food. I mean, what are you going to do if you're God? What would most people probably say about that? Yeah, it's like, come on, just starve. What are you going to do? God's grace in this is just so amazing. And it's more than they're just complaining about their current situation. What do they say specifically that is just so striking in verse 3?
Brought us out in the wilderness to kill us.
Yeah, you brought us out here to kill us, as opposed to, where were they before? In Egypt. And how are they remembering Egypt right now? Oh, the food and the water and the food, and don't forget the food, the food was there. Do you remember the food? Because there was food. The good old days. Man, they're really romanticizing what happened in Egypt, the slavery that they...
Jason, is that this particular complaint, they're saying, as long as we were filled, I wouldn't have cared if you killed me there. Because it's almost what they're saying, I almost would rather die as long as I know I'm in comfort there versus I'm dying by just starvation.
Right.
So there's the complaints even crazier just saying that. Not the fact that they just forgot what just happened a second ago, how God provided Pharaoh or whatever. But now it's the arguments are getting even more, I don't know, crazy because of not just the shortness of time period, but how they're like you said, romanticizing slavery, but slavery into I don't even care if I die as long as my stomach was filled. Back in Egypt where I was also having slavery.
Yeah, amen. Yep. Like, just think about the mindset behind this, and to be willing to say something like that. Yeah, I wish I had a full belly and still be in Egypt than out here. Yeah.
Having made this trip once upon a time not long ago, the perspective of what they really experienced is really stark. Here they were in Cairo, or the mouth of the Nile, where they had everything, could grow anything, all kinds of food. They crossed the Red Sea, come down to Elam, which was the last one where there was any water. But once they go across the Red Sea, they get into Sinai, which is nothing but sand dunes up on that end. And then after they get about halfway to Mount Sinai, it's nothing but sheer rock mountains. And those mountains don't deteriorate like our mountains do, because you don't have freezing and thawing, and the only weathering there is rain. So it's just a sheer rock bluff, and there's the little wadis that they call them, which is the valleys between the mountains, are dry. There's no water there unless it rains. And literally, God is the only one out there. And that might have been what he was trying to teach them, I don't know. Because had he sent them up the coast, there would have been food and water, even though they had water supply. But here it was nothing but dependence on him.
That's a great point. And I think that is the ultimate point of all of this. Why did God choose to take them this way? One, to avoid, the wars and stuff. They're going to get to that eventually. But he needs to build their faith first. Because, and let's just think about that for a second. What would the Israelites have seen as far as like spirituality in Egypt? What was the spiritual climate in Egypt? Yeah, idolatry. There's so many gods for everything. And there's God for this, God for that. And that's what everybody has. And it's like, well, we're in a prosperous land. It looks like their gods are taking pretty good care of them. So this looks pretty good. God has to teach the Israelites a lesson. And I mean, it's more than just teaching the Egyptians a lesson. The Israelites had to build that faith as well. And so God does this by forcing them to rely on him. I mean, you go out there and it's like you no longer have the vegetation, the water, and you are looking at barren wasteland, and it's like, how are we going to survive? And we got like 2 or 3 million people here. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And what are we going to do? Well, it really makes you have to depend on the Lord. I think that's what it comes down to.
Hey, Jason, it reminds me when the Hebrew writer says, you got to believe that God is and that he rewards those who seek him. There's a specific kind of unbelief here, right? Because they wouldn't have any doubt that God existed. He was literally in a fire in front of them. They didn't have any doubts God existed. They did doubt a lot that God cared about them. And so there's a specific kind that the Hebrew writer still calls unbelief. But they knew God existed. They didn't know God cared about them.
That's a huge thing, yeah. God, we believe he has the power to do it, but does he care enough about us to do it? And you think about just, I don't know, why are Snickers commercials so appealing? And I haven't seen one in years. I don't know if they still do that. I'm sure they do. But they have like the people, I swear, I promise, there's a point to this. So you have someone who like transforms into a different person because they're hungry. Have you seen those commercials? Anyways, and it's like, why wait? Grab a Snickers, and Snickers satisfies, and all of that. And it makes sense, because when we get hungry, we get hangry, and it's just, we aren't thinking with our mind anymore. And I get like that sometimes. And I think that what's happening here with the Israelites is they're experiencing a lot of that. They're experiencing the hunger, and it brings out this fear in them. And really, it is revealing their hearts of what's really down in their hearts. Because ultimately, did lack of food cause the Israelites to not have faith? No. What did it do?
Exposed it. I mean, to God with their concerns versus complaining against God. You know, we, as kids, when we're taught this, we're taught that complaining was their sin. And I'm not sure it was complaining in of itself more than it was just grumbling against God and the ungratefulness and the lack of faith that showed that he had just done all of these magnificent works and they don't understand that they can ask him for food or give him food.
True. Amen. And I know sometimes, and even right now when I talk about them, sometimes it's like we look at them and we're like, guys, come on, you just saw all that. How can you forget that quickly? It's like, how quickly do I forget? And do I go through anything close to what they experienced? Do I ever experience like true hunger? No, probably not. Probably not what they went through and what they saw. And so, we got to think, what would I be doing in that situation? What would my faith be like? It's so easy to just remember the past in such bad ways. I mean, have you ever heard of someone who was a Christian, who became a Christian and God saved them from all kinds of stuff, but then they're like, oh, man, I wish I could still do this. I still want the drink. I still want, whatever. There's something about our former life that sounds appealing. We forget the hard things and remember the good things. And the famous saying, it's much easier to take Israel out of Egypt than it is to take Egypt out of Israel. It's the famous saying that everyone knows. What other applications do you want to talk about in this section through verse 3?
You ever heard the saying, choose your heart? And so along the lines of what you were just talking about, on the other side, from wherever we are on the other side, it looks easier, but life is hard. And so life was hard in slavery, but they forgot that when they were hungry. And then life was hard without God, but they forgot that during the Judges when they would go back to idolatry. And so we chase comfort, we chase ease, we chase, smoothness, calm. And so, either being hungry in the desert is hard, and they made it harder on themselves by forgetting that it could be easier with God. So you can kind of think about that in today's, struggles are hard. They're harder without God, but when things are relatively easy as Christians and we think, or things get hard because we're Christian, we think it's so much easier, but I didn't have to worry about obeying God. But then when things are, easier, it's easier to be a Christian. We think about it the other way, and so, choose your heart.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be difficulties in life. I mean, that's just living in a fallen world, what that is going to be like. But what does our gratitude and attitude do for us? I think we just have such a short-term memory problem. It's so hard to remember all the times that God has delivered us in the past. All right, anything else through verse 3?
Just the patience of God. I think about these verses and this story a lot as a parent because your children do this exact same thing. And I definitely am not as patient as God is. But you can see why it would be so frustrating. Like when my kids complain about being hungry, I'm like, I would never let you starve. Like why are you acting like this? And that's kind of, it's kind of how this is. And and then I think, okay, well as a parent, that makes me really frustrated. Well, what about God with me? And he's much more patient with me. And it's just kind of a full circle application you can make there.
Different positions, spots that you get in life, it shows you different aspects about God. And I think that's why God does that, why he has created the family and the home and marriage and parenting and all of that, because it reveals more things about the relationship he has with us. And I think that's a good model. So I appreciate you saying that. I mean, just the perspective of how easy is it to get upset with somebody because they just don't get it? It's like, I said this 12 times. Why aren't you getting it? I won't mention names, but a certain son of mine is like that. It's like, dude, so I've told you this 38 billion times, and you're still doing it. Not that I'm frustrated with him. But sometimes you see that, and it's like, wait. I'm the same way. I'm the exact same way. And I see these lessons, I understand God's goodness and His grace, and then I go back into thinking, what am I going to do about this situation? But God provides. The next section, we're not going to read all these verses. That's a lot of verses. But I do want to get someone to do verses 4 through 8, if you would.
Then the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them, whether or not they will walk in my instruction. On the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily. So Moses and Aaron said to all the sons of Israel, At evening you will know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord. For he hears your grumblings against the Lord. And what are we that you grumble against us? And Moses said, This will happen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and bread to the full in the morning. For the Lord hears your grumbling, but you grumble against him. What are we? Your grumbling is not against us, but against the Lord.
Okay, thank you. So really here we get God's response to this problem. And again, the response is just amazing. You know, how patient is God with His people when they are just saying, you brought us out here to die. And again, we see the focus. They direct their anger at Moses, but it's really God who they are rejecting here, because God is the one, obviously, who provided all that. Do they really think that Moses could miraculously fix the water problem or get them out of Egypt or whatever? No, that was obviously God. But it says here that God is going to test them, verse 4. And how did He test him? How did He test the people in this case?
Well, it rains bread from heaven, and you have to go out and eat it.
Yeah, there it is. So the test was the manna, and God said, this is interesting how the test is something that God is actually doing for them. He's providing for them, and He calls that a test. That's kind of a weird way to look at that. But you think about why that's such a test. What were some of the instructions He gave about manna? What were they supposed to do?
How much they could gather.
Oh.
And he also picked out certain days that were to be gathered more than others.
Okay, yeah. So you go out there, and what does the manna look like? Like white flake frost on the ground, whatever. Eliud, whatever that. That guy, whatever he said. Yeah, so you see that on the ground, and does that stay there all day? No, it said when the sun gets hot, then it kind of melts. So they have a limited window of time to go out there and pick up the manna, and they say get as much as you need, and so they all go out. By the way, I think it's interesting. He said that they went out and some gathered much, some gathered little, but everybody had the right amount. And apparently that was an omer, two quarts, I think. And that's what each person was supposed to have. And they were supposed to do that how many days a week? 6. Well, okay, yeah, fair enough. Trick question, got him. Yeah, 5 days, you go out and get a normal amount. On the 6th day, what do? Get double, because what's true on the 7th? It ain't coming. Now, think about this. Every single point that God gave them to obey, the people found a way to disobey it. Isn't that weird? No, it's not weird, actually. People are really good at that. We're good at not listening. So when He told them, get as much as you need for the day, what did some of them try to do? Get more. Yeah. Now, why would you do that? What's the point of that? Yeah, it's like, is it really good? Like, it just kind of appeared. Is it really going to be there tomorrow? I don't know. I would just feel a little bit safer if I kept it. How did God fix that problem? Worms. Yeah, right. It was nasty. Like, you couldn't do that. It would not keep to the next day. So that forced them to go out every single day and get it. Now, but then he said, all right, get double on the 6th day because it's not coming on the 7th. And by Jiminy Cricket, you know what they did on the 7th day? Some of them went out to look for the manna. And they're like, where's it at? What do you mean, where's it at? God told them. And so every single point along the way, God told them what was going to happen, and he expected that, but they didn't. By the way, I didn't mention this. Where does the name manna come from? You know what literally translated the Hebrew is for manna? Oh, what is it? What is it? Yes, that's right. What is it? That's literally what it is. So it gets the name because the Hebrews went out and they saw it and they were like, what is it? But it would have sounded more like manna. So that's where the name came from. But that was just amazing that they had never seen it before. It just sort of appeared. There was no way for them to misconstrue this as I did this for myself. This was absolutely God doing this. So, what would you say are some lessons that God is teaching them through the manna?
To obey his word.
To obey his word, yeah. He gives them instructions. He expects them to do it. What else?
Jesus teaches that about in the disciple prayer. He gives us this day our daily bread. So to be cognizant every day we need to be trusting in God.
Okay, yeah, there we go. I think there's a level of dependence and trust. I think I have those two words up there. Yeah, depending on God. And it was interesting that it is the daily bread. It's daily. And why do you think he would want them to do that daily? Wouldn't it be good enough for God just to say, hey, here's a 2-year supply? What do you think the wisdom is in doing that daily? Well, yeah, maybe eat too much. We'll like binge it or something.
Warns them when they go into the promised land and they have all of these things that they didn't work for, that they would forget him. That's exactly what they did. And so if he were to just give them a week's worth or a month's worth or a year's worth of food at a time, they would start to forget that they needed to depend on him, that those things came from him, but they needed to depend on him and trust him to have those things.
Amen. You hear Deuteronomy 8, read the entire chapter because that's exactly what it's about. I mean, God knew what kind of attitude the people would have. They are very good at being arrogant about their own blessings. But God continually teaches them, no, remember, it's me. So he intends for them to depend on him, to trust him, to, every morning I'm going to go and there's the food. It's going to be there because God said it would be. And I know that he is going to be faithful. He's going to provide for me. My trust is not in a full pantry. My trust isn't in like all my jars of manna. But trust is in God to provide that every single day. Now, so Paul mentioned that we have obedience there. We obey. Think about that. Why is it important for us to learn obedience?
That's how we survive spiritually.
It is. Yeah. I mean, that's it. God intends for us to listen to him. And so he has things that we need to do. God's grace in this situation was the manna's right there. Did God go ahead and load the manna into their houses or into their tents and already have it in the little storage containers for them? Did God put it in their mouth so they could go ahead and chew? What did the people have to do? Get up and go. Get up and get it. Now, God was still the one providing for it. They obviously weren't doing that themselves, but he wanted them to see, I need to be obedient. I need to go and get it myself. And that's what God expects of us. God, when he says do something, we better be doing it. Do you remember in the law of Moses, the provision for poor people? How God said that the poor would get their food? What did he tell the people, like landowners? Yeah, leave the corners, get the gleaning, and so they could glean. They didn't tell the farmers, hey, go and like cook all this food and then hand it out. They said, no, leave it there, and then they could go and they could provide. So God wants us to trust. He also wants us to obey. There's two parts to that.
Those two things go together too. I mean, we're not going to obey somebody that we don't trust, but then when we obey, that also builds the trust. And so it's kind of a two-way thing. He was showing them they could trust him, and they didn't need to go out and gather the manna because he said to, but he was showing them, you can trust me, I'm going to feed you. And in response, they would go gather the manna. And so I don't think you can have one without the other. And sometimes we put the obedience before the trust, and then the obedience becomes more an obligation than a show of gratitude that we trust you. Because you know what's best, because you provide, we'll do what you say. Instead, we think of obedience as well, I have to do these things or I'm going to be punished. And that's really, trust really does need to come first. And they didn't have a reason not to trust him. If they had trusted, they would have been more obedient in the first place. But I think he was trying to build their trust. And if it works like it's supposed to, that obedience will be born out of that trust.
Yeah, for sure. And it should have been.
But all throughout the Old Testament, Israel constantly done the same thing. Never tried to taught their children. They rejected God all the way into the New Testament and then killed his son. And that was the final straw.
They did. Summary of the rest of the story.
I think it's interesting, you have the two types of disobedience. So you have the people who were the preppers, like I'm gonna go out and gather enough for tomorrow, because what if? And
Right.
they're very anxious, and they're disobeying by trying to find their own security in themselves instead of God. And then you have the procrastinators who didn't do double on the 6th day, and they go out on the 7th, and they're like, well, it should be here, but it's not. I should have, listened and gathered what I should have done yesterday. So he's teaching both groups, like, you have to do what I say. You can't be overly anxious, and you can't be underprepared. Like, do exactly what I say, and you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, amen. I mean, either side of that. Yeah, for sure. 10. Thanks. So there's something that I want to just really focus on before we move on. We will eventually move on, I promise. But look at verse 7. He says, in the morning you will see what? His glory. Look at verse 9. Moses told Aaron, say to the entire Israelite community, come before the Lord. Look at verse 10. Aaron was speaking to the entire Israelite community. They turned toward the wilderness, and there in the cloud, what appeared? The glory of the Lord. And at the end of verse 12, then you will know that I, the Lord your God. The thing that they needed to know, and I think Tara was hitting on that we need to trust God. We need to know God. And the more that we know God, the more that we're going to obey him, the more that it's going to be easy to trust him because we understand who he is. These Israelites should have a way to know that this is God and that they should be able to trust him because of how great he was and how much that he had brought them through. They really need to see how big God is.
They were undeserving of anything,
Yeah.
but God provided anyway.
That's insane. Like, why did God do this for these ungrateful people? Like, they didn't deserve it. Not at all. They were the ones who were calling out and asking for deliverance when they were in Egypt. Now they completely forgot about it. They were essentially telling God, I wish that you had never saved me. And God is still gracious enough to provide for them. This is just amazing. The grace of God is just mind-blowing.
Jason, you think we see some lessons on contentment in this? The water wasn't enough. I know they were thirsty for 3 days, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I need food. Obviously, they did need food. But and now, they would gather more than they needed. And it was spoiled. You see some lessons of contentment in this as well.
You do. I mean, it's never enough. You think about Numbers 11, when we fast forward about a year in time, they start complaining about the manna. It said some riffraff among them were just like, man, we have this, we look at this manna all the time, and that's all we get. We bake it, we boil it, and what else can you do with it? I don't know. And it was like, I wish I had some more stuff, but they didn't. But they forgot that God had provided. And that's it. When we complain about those things, when that's something that pops into our head, I mean, we're so spoiled. You know, you think about like a child that has like every toy, gadget, gizmo, whatever, and then they start crying because they don't have that one thing. What do you call them? Spoiled brat. It's like, come on, you have like everything. You know what we are a lot of times? The same thing. Yeah, we're spoiled. And we don't realize how good we have it. These people, and again, man, they should have had faith. They should have had trust. They should have had a lot more than they have, but I think we do as well. There's a couple things I want to just sort of skim through. There's a connection in 2 Corinthians 8, verses 13 through 15, that Paul quotes what's happening in Exodus, and he says, those who gathered much had no excess, those who gathered little had no lack. And he's making a connection to Christians that we, even us, we need to remember that God is the one that provides, and sometimes we get ourselves in trouble because of how much we want and desire and hoard things up. So essentially there, he's saying that the people in Egypt, not in Egypt, the Israelites in the wilderness, when God told them to get manna, they went out and got manna. And the ones who gathered a lot, how much did they have? Enough. Those who didn't gather as much, how much did they have? They had enough. God created equality. He created everybody had enough because everybody, like they ended up with the same amount somehow. That seems miraculous. I don't know, but they had the same amount. Is that how it works now?
Share. Goes out young and he gathers extra, and then somebody old, they don't gather up much. They share their extra.
Yeah, there you go. And so we have this sharing principle. If somebody has more, then they're intended to share it with others. If you have less, you're intended to have the blessing of receiving that. And so that's something we short circuit God's desire there, because I think sometimes we try to hoard it all for ourselves. It's like, well, what if I have a bad year? What if there's some wisdom in setting aside for a rainy day, storing up for winter. There's some proverbs about that. But is there a point where it's too much and we just want to hoard and be self-sufficient? Like, what does that even mean, being self-sufficient? It means I don't need God. And that's not a good place to be. There's so much danger in prosperity. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. The entire reason, the only reason I made a PowerPoint is for moments like this where I'm way over time, and I'm going to go through quickly some of the highlights and then bring it all together at the end. So in verses 31, back in Exodus 16, verses 31 through 36, there is this idea of remembrance. He says, I want you to take an omer of manna and put it in the Ark of the Covenant, basically. And so they were going to keep that. And the reason why is people forget. We're really, really good at forgetting. These people obviously were great at forgetting. Think of all the other memorials God intends for them to look at. I mean, the Sabbath day for one, but the Passover, all the way throughout Joshua, they were setting up these memorial stones everywhere to remember. And for us, Lord's Supper. Sometimes people ask, well, why do you do that every week? Like, wouldn't that get repetitive? No, we need the reminder. Like, we absolutely need that. And our perspective of things matter. I mean, it's just something we got to do. Okay, the other section here in Exodus 17, 1 through 7, this is where they're at Rephidim, and it's the famous water from the rock situation. And again, there's another crisis. Was there any reason to think that God could actually provide for them here? Well, yeah, he had the plagues that saw his power, he had delivered them, he had led them, he had done all of these other things for them. But that statement in verse 7, the end of it, So he names this place Massa and Meribah because the Israelites complained, because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? It's like, is God actually there? Is he actually providing? I can't tell. It's like, guys, come on. That is like the worst thing that you could possibly say. But again, I think we have that problem too. And we have this challenge in ourselves. There's some things I'm not going to talk about here. But I'll give you the last. Boom. 5 applications. Here they are. Boom. Don't judge God's faithfulness by today's circumstances. Now, sometimes we think, well, God is faithful if he does this for me, or if he takes care of me, or if I have this. No, God was there through us, even in the hard times, even in the difficulties, he never left us. Gratitude really is a choice. We have a choice to be thankful, and we have a choice to make sure that we are giving that thanks to God, and really it helps our mind. Misery loves company, and the more that we complain, the more we bring people that are around us down. And sometimes I'm having a good day, and then someone complains about something, I'm like, yeah, I should be mad about that too, shouldn't I? No, we need gratitude, be able to shut that down. God teaches us through daily dependence. That's how he works with us as well. He blesses us, and he intends for us to share those blessings. And we learn gratitude by the way that we're generous, and we learn generosity there. And the last thing there, we need continual reminders. I saw a post on Facebook the other day, and most stuff on Facebook is terrible, but this was cool. It said, how do you feel about hearing a lesson that you're really comfortable with and familiar with, and it's like, we've been through this before. I've heard about manna. I've heard about water from a rock. What's our attitude when we come across something like that? Well, a prideful attitude says, I don't need to listen. I already know all that. But the humble response is, I'm so thankful for this reminder. Thank you for bringing this up into my mind again. And that's what we need, and that's what God does for us. So we ask the question to ourselves, is the Lord among us or not? I hope we realize he is. Thank you all.